Okay, well, it's 1:45, so I think we're going to start away. And just very briefly, I'd like to welcome you to this session. My name is Rebecca Place and I'm the media officer for TESOL-SPAIN. This session will be recorded, so if you don't want to appear on the recording, please make sure you keep your camera off and you'll be able to watch the recording on Hoover for up to 6 months. So on behalf of TESOL-SPAIN, I'd like to welcome Nadia Dukić and her session Teaching Difficult Learners, just to check you're in the right room. So I'll be the moderator for the session. Please use the chat function if you have any problems. Make sure that you keep your camera off and your microphone muted unless you want to say something or if Nadia asks a question. We also have a Q&A box where there are already some questions. You can post your question and hopefully Nadia will have time at the end to answer them. You can also click on like if there's a question that you like, so that we'll definitely ask that question at the end. Bear in mind that if you use the full screen, you won't be able to see the chat, so exit full screen, write your question, and then open it again. And if you have any technical problems, refresh your page. Okay, so Nada Dukić studied Slovenian, English, and Croatian language and literature at the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. She's a professor of Slovenian language and literature. In her teaching career of 25 plus years, she's dealt with elementary, secondary, university, and adult students, and has attended teacher training courses in Slovenia, England, and Croatia. She regularly speaks at international academic teaching conferences and regularly contributes articles in well-known publications. So, Nada, would you like to start away? Thank you very much for coming today.
Okay, thank you. Well, first I just need to clarify one little thing. So my name, Nada, in my language and also in Serbian and Croatian means, so in Slovenian, Serbian, Croatian means hope, and not nothing like it is in Spanish. Unfortunately, I have some drilling that is going on in the building that I can't stop. So I hope it won't really interrupt horrendously our session. So today I will start with a short, just a very, very short video, and this video will first tell us the difference between shame and guilt. So very, well, let's say tough stuff to start with, but you will see that it is very useful when we carry on and touch upon some really important things. But before I do that, I would just like to say that this presentation is based on a course that I took part in England at Pilgrims, and also the name of the course was Teaching Difficult Learners. Regarding one of the questions, sorry, about who is a difficult learner, that I will address at the end of this session, when there will be enough time for questions and answers. So let's start.
There's a great quote that saved me this past year. A lot of people refer to it as the man in the arena quote. And it goes like this: it is not the critic who counts. It is not the man who sits and points out how the doer of deeds could have done things better and how he falls and stumbles. The credit goes to the man in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and blood and sweat. But when he's in the arena, at best, he wins, and at worst, he loses. But when he fails, when he loses, he does so daring greatly. And that's what this conference to me is about. That's what life is about daring greatly, about being in the arena. When you walk up to that arena and you put your hand on the door and you think, I'm going in and I'm going to try this, shame is the gremlin who says, you're not good enough. You never finished that MBA. Your wife left you. I know your dad really wasn't in Luxembourg, he was in Sing Sing. I know there's things that happened to you growing up. I know you don't think that you're pretty enough or smart enough or talented enough or powerful enough. I know your dad never paid attention even when you made CFO. Shame is that thing. And then if we can quiet it down and walk in and say, I'm going to do this, we look up and the critic that we see pointing and laughing 99% of the time is who? Us. Shame drives two big tapes, never good enough, and if you can talk it out of that one, who do you think you are? The thing to understand about shame is it's not guilt. Shame is a focus on self, guilt is a focus on behavior. Shame is I am bad, guilt is I did something bad. How many of you, if you did something that was hurtful to me, would be willing to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake? How many of you would be willing to say that? Guilt, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Shame, I'm sorry, I am a mistake. There is.
Okay, we are back. So why did we start with something like that? It is in fact very important in the teaching practice because sometimes, or maybe even many times, teachers are not aware when they trigger that, let's say, shame part in their students. And when they do it, unfortunately, the students in a way have the need to get their revenge. And that's, of course, not really a good place to be at, or it can't be pleasant for none of them. If we try to analyze if we repeat what the presenter there also pointed out, when we talk about guilt, so it means that a person did something that was not, let's put it mildly, that it wasn't acceptable. But if we did something, then we have the possibility to change our behavior. So when we are talking about guilt, we are talking about something that can be changed in our behavior, and we are in the so-called growth mindset. So we are also, when we are in a school environment or context, talking about developing our students' behavior. So what does that mean? Let's say we expect them to behave in a certain way, but we don't tell them what in advance, let's say, what that way is. So we really need to tell them how we want them to behave, not only, let's say, to punish them when they don't do it right. On the other hand, when we are talking about shame, it means that we, in a way, feel as if we were a failure. So that means that nothing can be done, and that's really extremely painful. That's why this is connected, the so-called fixed mindset, where there is no, let's say, solution offered. And here, we also, when we say, also in the teaching context, when a student does something that is not acceptable, we don't say, you are, let's say, bad, but we say, you did this, this, and this, and that is not okay. And then we, let's say, lead him or her in the direction that we want them, let's say, to go. Here are some interesting points that I would like you to think about for a while. And they refer to two types of errors. So in the first column, we've got academic ones, and in the second one, behavior ones. And if we, in a way, compare them, we can, it's really interesting. For example, the ones that I find especially interesting are, for example, here when they say, academic errors signal a need for additional or modified teaching. And then behavioral errors signal a need for sanctions. And also this one, good behavior requires compliance. So people should not explore limits, nor question or challenge what they are told. So this is, it might in a way, or on the other hand, good learning requires explorations. People learn by questioning and challenging what they are told. What is also very interesting when it comes especially to disruptive behavior is this. We as teachers tend to think that our students are doing something that irritates us or that is disruptive just to irritate us. But in fact, that's not the case. When they do something like that, many times, or many times, why they do it? Because every, let's say, human behavior has some cause, and they do it because some of their needs hasn't been met. And when we go, let's say, deeper and we find what that need is, we then can continue, let's say. This is also, in a way, we can, it's similar to us teachers. So when we as teachers are not in our optimal state, and each teacher, maybe more experienced ones, can, let's say, deal with that a bit better. Each of the teachers, let's say, or at least intuitively knows what they need, what are their needs to be in an optimal state for teaching. And when the teacher's needs are met and he's in that optimal state, he can deal with any challenge that they, let's say, come across when they are in front of a class, or in front, if it, let's say, a student, if it's one-to-one, if the class is one-to-one, etc. Another thing that I find also interesting, because all the things that we are trying to, or that I'm trying to present to you now, explain, whatever, are connected to one practice that is called restorative practice. And one of the points that I, as a teacher, find really useful and valuable, well, useful, I would say, is that if a student did something that was disruptive, that was not acceptable, then they need to know that there will be consequences. So, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we, in a way, attack, let's say, as teachers, because we are still in that, let's say, we are a kind of authority in one way or the other. So it's not that we, let's say, attack them, their personality, but we try to, let's say, analyze the behavior, what they did. It is very important when we do it that we don't expose them publicly, and that we don't tease them. And the last point is also very important. They do need to feel that we, whatever we say or do, that we care about them. One of the of my famous quotes is, so when the teacher takes care of their students, that's this nurturing context, the learning takes care of itself. So there should be always that element of care behind every, let's say, action that a teacher takes or chooses. Now, here is one very...
Can I ask you a question? Sorry.
Yes, yes.
I don't know whether you have the window open because your neighbors are driving people crazy. I know there's nothing you can do, but if there's a window open, maybe you could close it?
No, I've got everything closed,
okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry to stop you. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, I have to deal with this because it can't be stopped. Yeah. Here is one very interesting social discipline window, and it shows on one hand the level of support or nurture, and on the other hand consistency of rules and boundaries. When we go to two extremes, it is not okay. And the two extremes are the following ones. When there is too high consistency of extremes, too high consistency of rules and boundaries, and too low level of support and nurture. In that case, we are here. So it means that we do something to the students. The other one, the other extreme is when there is a too high level of support and nurture, and there is almost no level of consistency of rules and boundaries. So it means that the teacher does everything for the students, so it would also mean instead of them. Another one that is also very interesting is when you've got a very low level of support and nurture, and also a very low level of consistency, level of the consistency of rules. So this one, in this case, it means that there is neglect. So the teacher doesn't really care about their students. The ideal one, the ideal, let's say, model would be when there is a high level of consistency of rules or boundaries, and also high level of support and nurture. And this is the so-called restorative model. When there is a lot of cooperation, collaboration, communication, and problem solving. And in this case, we are doing things with our students. And this is the window, let's say this part is the window of restorative practice. Here is one quote that talks about the so-called restorative interventions. And as you can see, the main word here would be care. So in any, also maybe one thing that I would point out here, and it will we will meet it later. So it means when there is this high level of consistency and rules and high level of support and nurture, it means that we are relentlessly consistent in, but at the same time caring. Here are three important principles of restorative approaches. So three, let's say, stages which need to be acted out The first one is reflection. The second one is repairing. And the last one, very important, reconnecting relationships so that the two people can again collaborate and work together. Here is something that was already mentioned also in the description of my workshop, and it talks about the needs that the one who has caused harm has, because they also, of course, have them. We said that every behavior has some reason, and usually that is if the behavior is disruptive, then the reason behind is a need that was not met. And of course, when somebody is, let's say, the one to whom the cause was, who is the, let's say, on the receiving end of on the receiving end of some harm, basically that's more or less, we could say, psychological harm. Then they also have their needs. When we compare what do each of the people in this case need, it is very interesting, because in some instances, these needs are also completely the same. So each of them, they need somebody to listen to their story. It's very interesting. Each of them have their point of view, their story. The one the ones who harmed somebody, the ones who have been harmed, they need time to calm down, and the one who caused that harm, they need time to think. And then here it is why me, on the other hand, why I did what I did. On the left side, so the one who was on the receiving end of this harm needs to have the opportunity to acknowledge the impact that was there on them, and the other one the opportunity to apologize. And in this one, the last one is very important. So there needs to come a point when each of them can, as we said before, continue to communicate, or put it even simply, they need to have the opportunity to move on. So that conflict can't stay there forever. What I wanted to try with you as a group, but unfortunately I haven't, let me see if I do have, what I wanted to do with you, but as it seems I can't do it, to try in the breakout rooms, but I'll explain it, and then we'll just discuss it then together on one concrete example. When we use this method, so the so-called restorative practice, we have 3 people involved. The first one is the questioner. So this is the person who was on the receiving end of harm. Then the second person is let's say, if that is the student, then the student who did something, so it would be the person who caused that harm. And the third person would be the observer. how this is done. So let's say the restorative question is the teacher. What do they need to be like? This is, of course, done outside the classroom. It is not done in front of the whole class. The reason for that being not to publicly humiliate whatever the student. So what is the teacher in this case in the role of the restorative questioner supposed to be like? Curious, open questioning. We will see in a minute what, or in a second almost, what these questions are like. Open questions, so it means that you ask a question, in this case, a question in such a way that there are not that you don't expect only yes and no questions. Apart from open questions, there is also open body language. Good eye contact. So it means that the teacher, in a way, has good rapport, let's say, good rapport for the whole time. The attitude of the teacher is neutral and non-judgmental, very important. And before, when we were talking about being relentless, we are, as a teachers, relentless, but gently relentless, so that we are, again, putting everything in a nurturing. So we are putting, if you remember, discipline in a nurturing context. And this one is also very interesting. As teachers, we tend to be kind, but in this context, yes, we are kind. So yes, we are gentle, but not too kind. So it means this is this relentless, again, part. This is that part when we, in a way, expect discipline or compliance. And a very sensible use of silence. What would that mean? So when we ask a question, we don't snap, or we don't ask another one or whatever, but we wait for the answer, because what we are asking the student, if they did something that was not acceptable, that was hurtful to us as teachers or even individuals, of course it is not very pleasant, or it's not easy. That's why they need time to think, to ponder, and then to give us, let's say, some well, deep, sincere, whatever answers. Here is the so-called restorative chat prompt card. What I would ask Rebecca, you are with us, aren't you?
I am indeed.
Yeah. So now I will just tell you what because I can't share the whole presentation with because of the copyright with the listeners, with the participants, but I will tell you what can be shared, and what can be, I will ask you to put in the chat, because you can do it and I can't. Mm-hmm. So you've got all that as a screenshot. So all that you've got as screenshots, I would like you to just save there. So the restorative questioner, this is the first one. In fact, these slides, a restorative chat prompt card, mm-hmm. Observers, and observer feedback guidelines. That's what I think you've got all. I sent you, I think, all of that, didn't I?
You did.
Okay, thank you. Okay. While Rebecca is doing that, we'll have a look at this prompt card. When a teacher is having that important, let's say, restorative chat with their students, then they are asking questions, but only these questions. Why is that so? That's exactly to make it neutral and non-judgmental. Because they don't want to trigger again guilt. Because if they trigger guilt, then the students won't cooperate. They won't be open enough. Then, as we said, the context won't be nurturing enough. And also very important, they won't be able to cooperate after the incident that happened, for example. So the questions are very simple. And when they explained us this model, they told us that teachers had first these cards on them, and then they almost, let's say, learned them by heart. And it was something really natural that they asked their students. So what are these prompts? Tell me what happened, very, let's say, simple. Then what were you thinking at the time? Then what do you think about it now? Who was affected? How were you affected? Also very important, because there was something triggered in them as well, probably. What's needed to make things right? And the last one also very important. So how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? Now I will show you also another, a slightly different one, just a moment. The one that is intended for, yeah, here it is, just a moment. The one that is intended for young learners, because there you just, and I would also ask you, Rebecca, to also post this one as well, because I think that I also sent it. So for early years, well, this is, let's say, so we'll just make it simpler. For young learners, we would have, so again, what happened when you, and you say what they did, what, so was that a good choice or a bad choice? Was it fair or unfair? How did you make who was the person feel when you did that and that? And at school, it's not okay to. Next time I want you to. And to fix this, you need to, and say what. And here, here is one lovely little model for giving the apology. So they name the person, I'm sorry for, and the one who was harmed would say, thank you for saying sorry. I didn't like it when they say what they did, and it made me feel, etc., etc. Okay. Now, what I would like us to look at is, and in this case, I would like you to, yeah, here it is. Just a moment, I'll share it again. Yeah. This is one concrete example of a case study scenario A. It's called here with Jacob. It says you like to, so this is, that's what I wanted us to role play, but it's unfortunately not possible, but at least we'll analyze this case. So you like to make people laugh. So this is the case of one student. It makes you feel good. You also love it when other people join in with you, as it means the fun goes on for longer. More fun means less time for, here is, sorry, a mistake, for the work in the lesson, which you find hard, especially writing. You find it hard to organize your thoughts and remember what to write. You can tell that your teacher is getting annoyed, but you can't seem to stop yourself from interrupting. Today, you think you might have gone a bit too far when you told her to keep your hair on, or you might have a heart attack, loudly in front of the whole class. She didn't look very happy. The teacher has asked you to speak with you after the lesson. So the first thing that we would need to, let's say, analyze to find out here are the so-called unmet needs of this student. And the first one, or when they, let's say, made the research, what is the main cause of students to be disruptive? It is boredom. So, but here, let's say it's not so much that this student is bored, that he wouldn't have anything to do, but here he's in a way covering up his, let's say, academic difficulties, because why he creates all the fun in the class. The reason for that is, of course, mentioned later, because the real reason that he, in a way, can't, let's say, follow the, or whatever, or that he can't excel is that he is not good at writing. And in a way to get away from that, he is creating all that he's creating. And what, of course, should be very much addressed also is then his behavior. In this case, it was in words, of course, towards his teacher. So they, Jacob's teacher and Jacob would go through the whole situation, let's say, of that day. They would use the questions that we mentioned before, and they would then come to some, let's say, conclusions, how they can later, let's say, cooperate better, etc. Now I would like to have some questions, if that is possible. And because I would like to also hear some of the participants' opinions regarding, let's say, some of the main points that were mentioned regarding restorative practice. So, Rebecca, I would kindly ask you to tell me about the questions.
Okay, well, we have.
I would, sorry, I would like to just to read the first question, that one that I already saw yesterday, because it's very important, so that I mention something. I'll when we hear it, I will tell you what it is.
Okay, so this was a question from yesterday from Michaela Armelini, and she said, good practice to label learners as difficult.
No, there was another one before that.
Okay.
Sorry.
There was another one, okay, from Borja Ornuela, who said, what do you mean by difficult learners? Abilities,
yes, that one.
Personality, motivation. Okay.
Even though these ones, yeah, can you please also repeat the second one, because they are connected? Yeah.
Okay. So I'll repeat them both. This was, what do you mean by difficult learners? Abilities, personality, motivation. And the one was, is it a good practice to label learners as difficult?
Good. Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. Because when I was on this course, label, yeah. Okay, when I was in this course, at one point we, or our mentor, he asked us, or it's not that he asked us, but he said that there is a debate regarding, so is because some of you mentioned that, so labeling, of course, is not acceptable. And the question was, are we talking about difficult learning or difficult students? And the premise was that, in fact, there are no difficult learners, but only difficult learning. So why difficult learners? Well, because in the context, in the school context, in the school practice, or whatever you want to call it, another term would be disruptive students, and this is the perspective, the teacher's perspective, of course. They are difficult for the teachers to manage them. But that's not, it doesn't sound really nice, I know, but that's how they appear to the teachers. Yes, it's not a good, let's say, practice to label students, but that's how they appear to us as, let's say, teachers. And in a way, to get to avoid using labels is all that that we mentioned here. So it means that we are non-judgmental, because being non-judgmental would mean that we don't use labels. But at the same time, being teachers, we do need to, in a way, we need discipline, we need cooperation from our students, but at the same time, we are the ones who provide all that, as they call it, safe, create, let's say, safe, nurturing environment context in which the learning can take place. Okay, maybe another one.
Okay,
if there is one.
Yes, we've got a question from, oh, I've just lost it. A question from Maria Begoña Garcia, who says, what if problematic students do not have the ability to communicate, not the language acquired yet, or they come from a foreign country, for example?
Okay. So this one can be also connected to what we, to the questions before. So it means we, of course, on one hand, we are in a way trying to we see, let's say, or we witness, whatever you want to call it, our students' academic progress. This is one part. On the other hand, there is their let's say, not only behavior, but let's say, their emotional state, anything that is connected to them. When it comes to the academic part, what I found very useful is all, even though I'm not, let's say, a special educational teacher, or I'm just the teacher of languages, but I always find very useful whatever I can find from that area of special educational needs. When it comes to especially this academic part, even though it can be also connected to social and behavioral part. Regarding, let's say, migrants in general, so the students who come from from foreign countries, and there that's very it depends on the country where in which country they are, because each country has got their own policy how they deal with let's say, with these students. But usually what I found very useful is to have, let's say, a team of educators, I would say, who in a way try to collaborate when it comes to that student. And usually I would say that there should be at least one person whom that student can trust. I mean, one person meaning one educator that is a kind of their tutor. Because it is not, also when it comes to, let's say, disruptive students, it is not the solution to just to make them dropouts. And also from the psychological point of view, they say that when a student has, as I said, also in this case, one educator in this case who cares about the student is enough. Because sometimes we think that we need to have, I don't know what, all in place, and what materials, etc., 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 because it is more this rapport, let's say, this yeah, I wouldn't say only a fan, but I'm an advocate of humanistic pedagogy. So it means that when you see this student as a human being first, and then as a student who, despite being of a different nationality, is still only a human being who has got the same needs, more or less, as you, then I think you can find those things that you have in common, and not to see them as a foreigner only, or as somebody who is totally different and you really can't know anything about them. Yeah, that would be that, please, from my part.
Thank you. There was a question that was actually asked, well, earlier on today, by Elika Vulcandi. You've mentioned some things already, but she asks whether you can recommend some classroom management techniques.
Yes, I can. Yeah. Usually, well, at least from what I've learned, I can also recommend you one, I would say, I don't know, maybe you know her, maybe you don't. But if you don't, I really would recommend you anything that you can get from Marie Delaney. Because what I really love about her approach is that it's very down to earth, but very effective. And one of the very effective things is that you set just a few rules, not a lot of them, and that you stick to them. That's one of the, let's say, techniques that she would suggest. Another thing that is very interesting, and I think it can be also, I think it's even connected to NLP, that you, for example, when if you want your students to calm down or whatever, then you can't be running around or whatever, but you need to stand still. You need to really feel your feet, so as if you were glued to the, let's say, to the surface, and you need to have yourself in control, basically, and you need to be in a way, yeah, another thing again. So you need to be in a way calm, but at the same time, let's say, consistent. Consistency is really important, because when they see that you are setting the same rules also in the same way every time, then it becomes, let's say, a routine. And establishing routines is very important for the students, because then they feel safe. And even though they won't admit it, when there are clear rules, they feel safe then, and they don't feel safe when there is chaos or anarchy or whatever. Another also for class management, but in a more, let's say, positive way. Another technique or method that I would also suggest is the so-called positive psychology. So, but this is not really a positive psychology as, I mean, as a discipline that would be far away from the school context. It can be, it's very practical and useful, but whenever it comes to any, let's say, technique, approach, method, still, in a way, be critical enough. I mean, or you need to know yourself as a person and as a teacher, and choose what suits best for yourself. I think that's very important. But these two, let's say, I would really recommend. For example, Mary Delaney said something that I, at that time, I maybe didn't pay so much attention to, but later I found out to be very true. She said she had to deal with students that nobody else could. She's the educational therapist, in fact. And she said that she used to feel really, I mean, so down, let's say, to put it mildly, at the end of every week. And then she found out that, in fact, she was feeling, or in a way, she was affected by all those feelings of her students. And this is also very important sometimes, to make that, let's say, the border between what is really yours and what is theirs, so that the teacher doesn't take upon them too much responsibility, because as teachers, maybe we tend to be like that. We think that we have to, I don't know, take care of everything and everyone and all the time, anywhere. And this was also proven, let's say, now in this COVID situation, when teachers, me included, I have to admit it, sometimes weren't able to, let's say, set the boundary between that professional time or time for work and our, let's say, personal time. Well, we can't even say personal time for our other stuff. I wouldn't really call it free time, because anyway, does a teacher have free time at all? I would sometimes ask myself. Any other question, maybe?
I think that's so true now that I think we've come to the end of the questions. Lots of people were clicking and voting on the questions that other people had asked. So okay. I think possibly you've answered everything. I don't know if anybody wants to write anything more in the chat or in the Q&A. Emmy, my colleague, has put up your links, which is great, on a Google Doc to your material. And then Charo Reyes and I have found a couple of links for Mary Delaney, so people can go and investigate.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for giving us some leaders. Know whether anybody has any more questions that you'd like to ask Nada?
Or maybe any comments that, anything that, if somebody wants to say something, I don't know, whatever, I would be really interested in that as well, regarding anything that we touched upon today.
If anyone would like to say anything, please just unblock your mic and you have free reign. Imagine we're in a room and you just put your hand up, you know.
Yes.
Please do. Anyone? Okay, well, I'll remind people what happens next, and in the next minute or so, if anybody wants to say something, please do. Please jump in. Remember that at 12 o'clock we have our opening plenary. It is a bit strange having an opening plenary at 12 rather than at 9 o'clock, but it is because of the people from all across the globe who've joined us. This is TESOL Spain, and we're very, very happy to have everybody around Spain, but we know that we have speakers, for example, Nada, who aren't in Spain. Time is too much of a problem with you, but there are some people who don't. So at from 12 till 1, we've got our opening plenary with Dr. Anne O'Keefe, talking about valorizing learner competence. And then we also have one more session after that, before we stop for the afternoon at 1:30. And then between now and the plenary, please do go and visit the exhibitors, take part in the community boards, post things so that you can be up there and win some prizes. And yeah, and here's just a message for you, Nada, from Angels Oliva-Girbo, saying, thanks for the session. You dealt fantastically well with all the noise.
It disappeared.
This is the social discipline window of your irritating neighbours doing their DIY. But you did it very well, and you've given us lots of food for thought. Adriana Cotto agrees, and she says thank you. And Beatriz Bravo says sure. So lots of very positive feedback there. There's one question. Hang on. Is it a question that I've seen? Ding, ding, ding. Can we have your contact details? So I'm not sure whether you have. I mean, this is from. Everybody can contact Nada in the attendees link, just clicking on your profile. But I don't know whether you've got a slide with your contact details that you can show us there.
Okay. I'll do it now. Just a moment. I can give my, let me see. Okay, I'll do it in a different way. Just a moment. My email address, for example. So what, regarding the noise, etc., what we are supposed to learn in this this year, that was by one spiritual whoever, is resilience. So I was just practicing that, and we heard it also from one of the previous. Okay, this is my email address. Feel free to contact me. I would be really happy to chat with you, at least online. And if you come to Slovenia, to our also a great conference, well, when it is face-to-face, of course, I'll be even happier to meet you. This is my first time at your conference, so you seem to be very techy, and I'm really impressed by your marketing almost abilities suggestions for teachers. So really, thank you very much for that as well. Otherwise, if there are no further questions or comments, whatever, then you can have maybe 2 minutes or even 2 minutes more than let's see, than it was what planned.
Okay, I'm going to read you just the last comments. Okay.
Okay.
People are saying thank you, that they've really enjoyed your talk. And Charo Reyes says, I want to thank Nada for her useful advice, especially for our large groups in the public sector in Spain, in which we have to deal with discipline, motivation, etc. problems. Very helpful. So I think that's a very nice way to round it off. Thank you very much. I hope you stick around and enjoy the rest of the conference today, next weekend. And wonderful. Thank you very much from Bilbao, where I am, to Slovenia, where you are. Thank you very much indeed. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye then.
Bye-bye.